Blessings, beautiful family. I am just so excited about our guest today. Like, honestly, my heart is already so open just with a short conversation that we had. And I'm just really excited to share what's coming through today. My guest today is Kaya, and I've had the honor of connecting with her once before. And I'm just so excited to learn more about her. So, welcome, Kaya. And why don't you just introduce yourself and we'll just go into this amazing conversation.
Oh, Jules, thank you so much for this invitation. I have been so excited about joining you today. My name is Kia Eileen, and I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I live over here in the UK.
Mm.
And um, I have an organization called the Build Foundation, and our slogan is Integrity and Love Invites in Our Doing. So I can't wait to share more about what's been happening and what we have in store and how I just want to really serve this community. So I'm super excited.
Oh, thank you for that. So we were kind of tapping in, and I think I'll let you kind of share what was coming in for you because it's coming from your heart, and some of the things that you brought through were so powerful. And I think let's start there, and then we'll open up the conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, I was thinking about, what I was going to talk about today because, you and I could go and we could speak for hours. And what came through very, very strongly, the message that came through very, very strongly was speaking around the courage to leap,
Mm.
the courage to leap. And I know the community that I serve are women over the age of 50. And, sometimes we've done everything, right, for everyone else. We have raised beautiful children and we have loving families. Maybe we're, successful entrepreneurs or business women, whatever it is we've been doing, just, heads of the PTAs, soccer moms, whatever it is, we've done everything. And a lot of times it's for everyone else. And, sort of in our 50s, the kids are grown and everything is ticking over really nicely. And I think we come to this crunch point where we begin to say, well, I've done it already for everyone else. I've crossed the T's and dotted the I's. And now what about me? When is it going to be my time? And so when we give ourselves permission to step out and say, well, okay, what do I want to do next? Maybe we have an idea, maybe we have a feeling, maybe we have a nudge, but there's something holding us back. And what happens if we can find the courage to leap? Well, magic happens. Magic has happened so many times in my own life personally because the courage to leap is really part of my foundation. It's how I live and it's part of what I teach. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I'm going to share today.
I love that. And I know for those that are listening, those are what I call the divine yeses. It's the willingness to stop listening to the program mind or the people around you and to go inside and ask for the guidance and listen and do and wait for those divine yeses. And that really is, it's such a magical way of living. And what better time than now to live that way because our world is in a place where we really need people to start following our hearts because the heart is the divine blueprint. And when we shut out all the noise, including the ones that are in our own head, and
Mhm.
start listening, magic does happen. And I know you've had some really amazing magical experiences in your life. So I wonder if we kind of tap into some of those and so you can share some of your experience and then we'll keep going.
Abs- Absolutely. It would be a pleasure. You know, I have always, I think, been the kind of person without even really knowing what I was doing. I think I've always been the kind of person that sort of followed this kind of nudge, even when the divine yes, even when I didn't know, even when it didn't make sense to other people. And I was living in the States, and I was getting a divorce, and I was practicing law. And, on paper, originally, everything in my life was great, right? Everything should have been great. Had the husband, had the job I'd been striving for, and I was deeply unhappy, and, was getting a divorce. And one day I was driving home from work, and my chest got really tight, and I was struggling to breathe a little bit. And I was like, well, what's happening? What's going on? And I had not been feeling well, and I had a blood pressure monitor at home. I was 30 years old. And so the state of my life then. And so I took my blood pressure, and it was really, really high. My dad said, I think you need to go over to the hospital. And so I went in, and they took my blood pressure, and they said, either you're having a heart attack or a stroke. So we're going to take you back. And so I was lying there looking at my heart on the monitor, thinking, this can't be it, right? This just can't be it. I'm really young. I haven't done anything yet. I haven't lived. And so then the doctor came in, and he said, well, you're not having a heart attack or a stroke, you're having a panic attack.
Mm.
And so he gave me like medicine, or pills to just chill out a little bit, and sent me on my way. And it was one of those moments where I said to myself, I'm not going to die with life still in me.
Mm.
Not going to die with life still in me. And I made a decision, and I was just like, what have I always wanted to do? Well, I've always wanted to live in the UK. I studied here in the UK when I was in university, loved it. And I said, what do I want to do? I want to go move to the UK. And I hadn't been practicing law that long. And I went home, and I told my parents I'm moving to the UK. And they were like, you're not going. I was like, I am going. You're not going. I am going. And so I quit my job, packed 2 bags, took my savings, did not have a job in the UK. I just came. And I had a visa that lasted, I think, for about a year. And I said, if I find a job, I'll stay. If I don't find a job, I'll go back home and do the responsible thing that everyone says I should be doing. And I came over and very quickly found a job, and yeah, and stayed. And that was 24 years ago. Um, and so that was the first one, right? That was the first one. And, my parents were like, are you having a nervous breakdown? It's okay. It's okay. The divorce is fine. And I was like, it's not that. I was like, I just want to live. I just want to live. And I felt really suffocated. And I really felt like there was something really itching inside of me that wanted to be expressed. And, I talk a lot about expression and full expression. And I did not feel that I was fully expressing myself in the States. I was constrained by all of the layers and the labels, and I really wanted to be free of that. And so, coming to the UK was sort of like my freedom journey, the beginning of my freedom journey. And that was the first time I can really remember doing something really against the grain, that felt so good and so natural. And I've been kind of following that since then.
That
That was just one.
I know that's one. Okay, that's big enough. That is big enough. And okay, so where do we want to go? Because I think we all, most of us have that moment. And if we haven't, we're right on the edge of that moment. And let's talk more about what it takes and what that experience is like, and maybe even going into what it's like now, maybe versus what it was like then, because that's the thing is, especially once we go through raising the kids and we get to this part of our life, that it is almost like we're reborn again if we approach it in the right way, because we're starting another chapter of, or maybe even another book, and not in a way of that we're older, in a way that, wow, I just learned all of this amazing life journey. And now I get to choose in this moment what my next step is going to be. And what is that going to be? Instead of having it be, oh my gosh, because I know when my daughter went away to my last daughter, my youngest daughter went to college, was like, it was a shock for me because I am a single mom and all of a sudden I'm home alone. And luckily I have this beautiful business that I just kept pouring into, and it really did open up a lot for me. But it was still a hard transition to go from taking care of somebody on a daily basis to only taking care of myself.
I mean, that's huge, right? I mean, what you're talking about is a huge transition. And, as we were saying, when we have, the role of caretaker, and a lot of our identity and worth is attached to the caretaker role. And we're good at it. We're so good at looking after everyone else, but we're not so good many times in receiving
Mm,
and you know allowing and surrendering to what it is that we want, because many times we don't even ask ourselves, what do I want or what do I deserve? And
mm,
it can be really scary when you are without that identity or without that label. But for me, it's a massive, massive joy and a massive invitation to come back to center. Each one of us, we talk about fingerprints. We all have, distinct fingerprints, which means we have distinct journeys and distinct purposes here. And once we have fulfilled that caretaker role, and we're stepping into what I call the age of empowerment, it's an invitation to sit with that fear and realize that that fear is just an opening. And sometimes we're afraid of the unknown, and that's okay. But if we can say that, the unknown, the unknown is kind of what's maybe going to happen, but what can be known without doubt is who we are. And as we strip back all of those layers of mom, of daughter, of sister, of partner, whatever it is, we begin to ask the question, the first thing we can do is to make a decision.
mm,
Make a decision that this is now going to be my time. This is now going to be my time. And I'm going to allow myself to sit with however it is I'm sitting, what I'm sitting with, whatever it is I'm sitting with, I'm allowed to sit there and just feel it. And a lot of times we're sort of in doing mode, doing mode, doing mode, doing mode, doing mode. So when we stop, I say that the greatest power comes in the
mm,
undoing all of that we normally do to give ourselves a sense of fulfillment and purpose. So when we start to peel all of that back and just sit in stillness, we can begin to make a decision that now is my time. It's my time. And then we can step into the space of belief. Well, do I believe that I now have permission to be all the things that I wanted to be before all of this stuff came in? To believe that I can choose myself and it's not selfish, that it's filled with self love and self purpose? Do I believe that I deserve better than maybe I've been giving myself in the past? That sense of belief. And then having the courage. And that means sometimes stepping out in the fear, right? When I left the US, I was like, this is pretty big. I don't have a job and I'm moving country. And I just kind of, I just knew that I had to do it. I knew that I had to do it because I'd made a decision. Um, you know, can you choose yourself? Do you have the courage to choose yourself? Even when you might have other people, around you saying, well, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense. Or, you're too old for that. Or aren't you a little bit past that? Having the courage to say, I'm choosing this for myself. And that's okay. And then having the faith to know that the universe is also choosing you at the same time. It's
mm,
always going to be choosing you. When you choose yourself from the space of the heart, knowing that you are fulfilling what your heart and your soul and that divine purpose, that kind of alignment, when you sit in that space of alignment and know that I'm being pulled somewhere, I'm being pushed somewhere, and there's a fire inside of me, there's a fire in my belly, and there's a voice that's speaking to me. When you begin to listen and feel into that, and have the faith that whatever you're choosing is also choosing you, that will give you that additional courage to continue to step out on faith. And so, there's a wonderful dance that we can begin to do with ourselves, even in the space of what may feel like nothingness, because everything else has already been taken care of. But this time in our lives is such a gift. It's such a gift. Can you imagine if, all of the women that we're talking about chose themselves and just decided to, you know, write that book or go on that trip or start that business or enter a new relationship. So many people I'm talking to now are, exploring love after 50 and what that really looks like when they choose themselves. Oh, I mean, it's magical. It really is.
I got chills on that. I was just in Beverly Hills, and there was this outside of the window of the hotel room, there was this little courtyard thing, and it was kind of getting right now the sun is rising, but the sun was setting, and I looked out and there was three bats that were kind of playing in the it playing because they it did look like they were playing, and I had to go look up what bat medicine was. And one of the things that it said was that courage, it actually said fear is courage walking, and I changed it to courage is fear walking. And that's what I heard when you were saying. I was like, oh gosh, that's such the perfect thing, is that it's we can either experience the walk in fear, or we can experience it in that frequency of courage and what that takes. And that is a choice that we do over and over again, because sometimes I feel like the initial leap is the easiest part. It's what happens after that that actually is the harder part, because making that decision, we're doing it in that frequency of hope and faith, but keeping ourselves in that frequency of where we said yes to take that leap is the hardest part. So I think that's would be like where I'd want to take that, because that's when we're truly walking in courage, even in fear.
Oh my God. Yes. Thank you so much for, for reflecting that and bringing that to the surface. Yes, the first step is, like, yay, I've done it. And then you're like, oh no, I've done it. Like, oh dear, holy crap, I've done it. And I had so many of those moments, crying on my floor in London, in my flat in London, kind of going, what have I done? Like, this is insane. But it's really about going back to that initial feeling, the initial inspiration that invited you. It's that invitation. So going back to that invitation where you decided and then you chose yourself. What was the purpose? What was the feeling? What were you looking for? What was the feeling that you were trying to understand, and continuing to follow that with curiosity. When you choose yourself, you sometimes have to sit in those difficult moments because you don't know what the end result of that choice is going to be. When you choose yourself and the universe chooses you, it's choosing you for a reason. And sometimes that reason is, it eclipses, it's so much bigger than what you have envisioned for yourself. But when you continue to choose you in that vibration, you are continuing to choose universal life and universal love and universal wisdom. So staying in that space means that you are completely aligning yourself with that energy that is also choosing you, and it's also pulling you to that thing which you may not even know. So the second half of that story of me choosing to come to London, I was like, I'm not sure why I'm coming to London, but I know I need to come to London. And I kept having it in my mind and I didn't know why. And I was like, Mom and Dad, I'm going to London. And well, this is when I came the first time. I didn't know why. I was in university and I didn't know why I wanted to come here, but I knew I needed to come. And the night before I was due to come, my dad said, well, I want you to phone this woman. And I was like, who's this? And he said, well, this is your sister. And I was like, well, I'm sorry. I was 20 years old. And, I had this sister in England that I knew nothing about. And I began to really sort of understand how these energies and connections work. There was this life and this experience in my sort of matrix, in my, I guess, energy that was pulling me. And so then, fast forward, 10 years or so, and I'm in the UK, and I'd been in the UK at that point for about 4 years. And I thought, I'm done. I'm going back to the US. I've had my fun. I've had my experience. And I had an opportunity. I had clients, in various parts of Europe, and I had an invitation to come to the Canary Islands to work for a year. And I have a thing about islands. So I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. All right, I'll go down. I'll do it for 1 year exactly. And then I'm going back to the US. I was there for about 4 months. They have carnival over there. And my friend said, come out with us to carnival. And my family was like, why are you living in the Canary Islands? I was like, I have no idea, but I knew I was like, I had the invitation and I've got this real kind of pull to come, and I was having an amazing experience. So go out with my friends to carnival. They said, well, come along. Our friend from the UK, Rupert, is coming down. He's a really nice guy. You'll get on with him. I said, okay, great, fine. So I meet this guy. I'm like, not sure. Anyway, whatever. So we hang out that night. I wake up the next morning, my phone rings and it's Rupert. And I said, well, I didn't give you my number. And he said, well, I got your number from our friends. Let me take you out. So I said, well, if you can find me, I'll go out with you. And I hung up on him. And 45 minutes later, there's a knock on my door. I'm still in my pajamas. And he said, you need to go and get dressed. And so I did. We went out, and we went out a few times over the week that he was there. And then he came back to the UK. And so our friends were mutual friends. And we all went out to dinner, and they said, well, what about Rupert? And I said, well, I met the man I'm going to marry. And tomorrow is our 16th wedding anniversary. So I was like, oh, I get it. I get it. I had to go to Lanzarote because I was going to meet the man I was going to marry. And I have no doubt. So I ended up coming back to the UK, obviously, and we're still together. That was 20 years ago. And so there's something really important about, not knowing and not having the answer immediately. It may not be evident to you when you follow this divine nudge, this kind of I call them cosmic pivots sometimes. Doesn't need to make sense. But if you get the feeling, and if you know that the universe is pulling for you, I think it's important for people to understand what it feels like in your body to have a yes and what it feels like in your body to have a no. And on all of these moves, I was getting the feeling, the energy of the yes. And I got very clear very early on where my yes sat in my body, where my no sat in my body. And when I'm following my yeses, I just wait and I just kind of continue. And I'm always asking, okay, divine, what would you have in store for me today? How can I serve today? How can, what is the next thing that wants to be expressed through me? And I sit and I wait and I take action. And that's an important thing. We need to take action. It's not just about sitting and waiting. It's about getting those nudges and saying, okay, how can I be of service? What can I do today? Who can I serve today? What wishes to be expressed through me today? What am I creating today? And then taking that action, not knowing the result, but knowing that the universe is choosing you, it's pulling for you. And that thing that's out there, that's bigger than you can imagine, is waiting for you.
So many beautiful nuggets. And I feel like this last place is where I can hear everyone going, yeah, but so I feel like there's two different kind of people. So there's the kind of people that want action all the time and have trouble waiting for the next. And then there's those that get really comfortable in that stillness and waiting for the next. When it comes to take action, it can be a little bit difficult. But one other thing that you said, and I think it would be fun for you to kind of, if you have an exercise of even going to that place of, depending on if you're in action or if you're in the stillness, is knowing what the body feels. And I know it's going to be different for everyone, but if you have an exercise or something you could share with us, that would be amazing so that we know the difference between a yes and a no.
Beautiful, excellent, yes. And I love sharing this with my clients. It's something that I do because I had to get really clear with it. So if you think of a time, Jules, if you play along with me, we can do this together. If you think of a time when something was very, very clearly a no for you, can you sort of just take yourself back to that moment when something was a very, very clearly a no for you? Can you drop into your body and tell me where that sits?
My stomach.
It sits in your stomach. And what does it feel like, that no?
Like I just ate something I shouldn't have eaten. No, it's like really heavy, like density.
Exactly. And I love the way that you describe that. It feels like something that I've eaten that just isn't agreeing with me, right? Because when people say, I can't stomach something, our
Mm.
stomach is really the truth teller. It's the truth. It's the kind of like truth pot, if you will. And sometimes we need to listen to what our gut is saying, what our gut instinct is saying. So it's beautiful that that comes from there. So that feels like that no, right? So it feels like something, and tell me a little bit more about that sensation. So it feels like something that maybe you've eaten that's not agreeing with you. What else do you notice?
I would say contraction. There, my body wants to contract, and like, the more I sit in it, the more I'm like trying to like
Okay.
shield myself from it.
Perfect. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. We're going to sit in that contraction. So just sit in that contraction. What else do you notice? What's happening with your breath?
It's getting shallow.
It's getting shallow. Okay. So we're sitting in contraction. The stomach, the belly feels like there's something that's been eaten that's not easily digestible. Your body's folding in on yourself on itself. And tell me what your energy is doing.
You know what? It kind of feels, the more I sit in it, the more my energy kind of goes to more of that primal part. That's how I would describe it, is more of that primal feeling of either wanting to run away or freezing. It's more on the, in this case, it's more of the freezing part of I'm I'm not moving.
I'm not moving. Beautiful. So we have a lot of information. We have a lot of information somatically that is happening in the body and in your energy. So, is there anything that's coming up in your mouth when you said it feels like it's something that I've eaten something bad? What's happening in your mouth as
I
well?
can feel energy being in my throat. Yeah, kind of like something stuck in my throat.
Beautiful. So the body's always giving us so much information and so many signs to say, like we shouldn't be doing this. And sometimes we override that because we get into our thinking mind, oh, I should be doing this, or it looks good on paper, or they said I should, or I'm following convention, or what is expected of me. But the body, your kind of truth serum sits inside of the body, and it's always saying, I'm giving you signs and signals from a lot of different directions. Please listen to me. Beautiful. So we're going to shake that off. We're going to breathe and
It
shake that
feels
off.
good to take that one off.
Brushing it off. Beautiful. Brush that off. Excellent. Beautiful. Now, I'd like for you to just sit and just breathe, breathe, breathe. Allowing the body to settle, allowing the breath to return to its normal rhythm. Beautiful. Now I'd like for you to imagine a time when it was a big, big yes. And you knew it was a yes. You could feel it was a yes. And just notice where that is in your body.
More in my heart.
Oh, I can feel that. I can feel that. Beautiful. And can you describe to me what the feeling in your heart is like?
It feels calm and peaceful. clear. There's a lot of purity.
Mm,
I feel connected.
mm,
Um, the only way I can explain it is maybe there's this unified field that I feel connected to, or is an expression, maybe would be a better way of saying that. And my shoulders definitely feel more open, and I really feel the more I sit in it, the more I can feel the energy actually moving up into my pineal gland and opening it up, allowing me to step more into a clear guidance or a channeling energy that's kind of flowing through me. Um,
mhm.
and then from there, I actually feel like my whole body is kind of activating. It's getting more energy. You can feel how I would say my cells are lighting up, going bing, bing.
Exactly. That's beautiful. And I can feel that. I can feel this energy and expansion, and it feels like light to me that's just flowing from you. So, what is happening? Before you said, this kind of area here around your throat was closing. What does that feel like in your body?
It feels very clean. It's funny because once I kind of stepped into this more openness, it's harder to go to any one area of my body because it all feels in resonance, and it almost feels like to go to one part of my body is limiting the whole experience somehow. I'm not really sure how to explain it.
You explained it perfectly, because the yes is expansive. The yes is dynamic. The yes glows. The yes is flows. The yes is light. And if you can imagine that when you are saying yes and something is saying yes to you, that is attraction, and that creates flow, as opposed to the energy that we were in before, where, it was literally your body kind of physically closed down. So that's when I say, when you say yes to the thing that is saying yes outside of you and is saying yes for you, you connect to things outside of yourself. They're always saying yes for you.
Mm.
And so I think, the more that we can invite ourselves, and, for those people who are action orientated, or, they want to sit in stillness, the stillness is important. The stillness is important, but it's not the end of the story. We need to take that aligned action. But following just that simple exercise, if they're faced with a decision, or I'm getting a nudge, and should I do this or should I do that? Should I be in this relationship? Should I take that job? Should I start this new job, my new role, or should I write this book? Whatever it is, I think just take a few moments to sit in the energy of what your body is saying to you. If you feel into that idea, that nudge, like, what does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like on your skin and in your energy? Does it feel like you're closing down, and does it feel expansive and like you're opening up? And then I think, you can play around with it, right? Just little decisions. You go to a restaurant, you're looking at a menu, feel into your body. Does it feel like a yes, or does it feel like a no? What TV show do I want to watch tonight? What book do I want to read? Have two books in your hand. Does it feel like a yes, or does it feel like a no? So you can start to play with this energy and the signs from your body without it being, this monumental decision. You can play with this and understand how your body is talking to you. And then, use that instrument, use your body, in other parts of your life, whenever you need.
I love it. And this is really what we're talking about here, I feel is really the next in human evolution is that we're going to stop going to our minds and really going to our hearts and listening to the intelligence of our body, because the intelligence of our body is holding a divine operating system. And a lot of times we'll say, oh, it's in the heart, and I feel like that's like the portal. It's like that's the first step one, and then activating the full body, because that blueprint, it knows. And there's a saying that I've heard recently is you can't fake frequency. And so we can hear the words all, or, there's, but they don't mean anything unless it's backed up by the frequency, and our body can tell the difference. It can tell the difference of, are those words true or are they not true? And that I feel like can, and they may be true for some people. This is always a personal thing. It doesn't mean that those words maybe are true for that person. It's not about saying what they're saying is a lie. It's just, is that true for me?
It's not true for me. And I think, so many of us are conditioned to look for the truth outside of ourselves and look for the truth for, what someone else is saying, and try to apply it to us. And if we can take that time to understand what is true for me, and do I have the courage to sit in that truth, even when it goes against, what someone else says might be true for me? So can we choose that truth? Because ultimately that is who we are. We are the truth. And you can't fake frequency. And I always like to say that basically our stomachs, our guts, our stomach is the biggest brain in our body. Our hearts, the frequency of our heart stretches out much further than the frequency of the brain. The brain knows, I mean, like that,
Yeah.
that much. But the heart knows everything because it's connected to everything. And the stomach, and that's why, eating well and, you know, taking all the supplements and having good gut health is so important, because the gut's intelligence is extraordinary. And a lot of our hormones, and we can talk about sort of like physicality and stuff like that, but everything comes from the gut in terms of, health and intelligence and thinking and processing. And so if we can drop down into the body and out of the head, so many of us live from the head up, but the intelligence is actually from the neck down. And so when we can tune into that, it can sort of, it's our GPS. It leads us into places that the brain would be shouting at us to stop. But the heart and the belly, especially as a woman, that womb space, whether you've had children or not, whether you bleed or you don't, that space inside of us is kind of like the truth pot. And so the more that we can lean into our womb and the wisdom of our wombs, that will never lead us astray.
That was so beautifully said. I know that there, I forget what they call it, but there is an actual connection between the mind and the gut. And I love that. And there was something you said I wanted to go back to. Okay, so oh, it's not coming to me. Darn, it was good too, but that's okay. Okay, so I feel like let's step back and go back to where we started this. And that is that decision to leave. It's the courage or the faith, whatever, wherever that leap come from. But I love that we just ended it with knowing the difference between a yes and no, because having that clear yes before
Mm.
we leap helps us stay in that space of courage, because we remember where we said yes from. So even when our doubts wants to come in, we're like, oh, but I can go back to that divine yes and remember that even in my fear, the universe is opening and guiding me, and I can step back into that and be quiet until the next step comes through. Let's kind of, I'll just let you kind of sum up, or something that you haven't said that you feel like would be supportive or helpful. Just let you kind of take lead on that.
No, no problem at all. Sometimes when we take that leap and we don't necessarily know the direction, we can kind of think, well, you know, it hasn't worked out. So this was a mistake. I
Mhm.
shouldn't have done it. Everything. You don't even know. Like there are some times when, after I came to the UK, I was like, this was such a dumb thing to do. And, I don't know why I've done it. And it doesn't make sense. But I've learned from that. and I gained experiences from that. And each step was another step. Each step was another step. Each step was another step. So I was taking these steps toward the life that I'm leading right now. And where I am right now is exactly where I'm meant to be. And it was as a result of taking those steps. And even when I thought like, this doesn't make any sense, or I've made a mistake, I was kind of like sometimes sitting in regret going like, why did I even do this? Right now is like literally the most perfect time, but it took so many moments of continuing to choose, continuing to sit in the yes, even when it didn't make sense, continuing to sit in the yes, even when I think, oh, this is a big mistake, continuing to sit in the yes when I might look at someone else and saying, well, they're much further ahead in their career and I'm not because I took these pivots. I wasn't meant to have that career. I was meant to have this career where I'm serving in the most authentic way possible. So having the courage to leap is also having the courage to say, I'm okay. Wherever I am right now is okay. There are no mistakes. I'm learning from this. What's the lesson that I can take from this? If I choose to do something different or better, brilliant, then I can choose to do something different or better, but just keep going.
Mm.
Just keep going. I promise you, just keep going. When you say yes, where you will end up, and it's not even an end, but the journey will be so beautiful. I'm having the best time of my life right now. And that was because I know 24 years ago, I said yes, even when, it was some really tough conversations with my parents going, are you insane? Have you lost your mind? I know that decision 24 years ago and all of the decisions that I've made since then, even when I think maybe this is stupid, have led me to this point. And sometimes you have to be patient. I mean, 24 years is a long time, right? But I've had so many beautiful moments because I decided to say yes. So know that there are no mistakes. If you want to do something different, pivot, but remember, pivot based on your yes, not based on the fear or talking yourself out of something. Pivot with your yeses. Make sure you're saying yes to yourself and follow the path that yes is taking you on.
Major chills all over. Oh gosh, honey, I just appreciate you bringing your wisdom.
Oh,
And this has just been, my heart is open. So this is the divine yes, that just having this reflection with you, I can feel it in my body. And frequency does not lie. And your frequency is just so pure and beautiful. And thank you for bringing that today. So I know everybody's going to want to know how to find you and how they can connect with you. Can you just share what the best way to do that is?
absolutely. And I want to thank everyone already, who's listening and who will tune in. Thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing in this space with us. You can find me on Instagram under I am Kia Eileen. So IAM and then KIAAILEEN.com. You can also find me under the Build Foundation. That's the foundation that I spoke about earlier, where we're serving people based on integrity and love and then taking divine action from that space. So that is the build foundation.com. Please come and find us and share your love, and we'll send that love right back to you.
I can feel it already. And we'll put those links in the show notes below as well. So if you're driving or you just don't have a pen nearby, you can find those links easily right there. Well, this has just been such a treat. Thank you so much for bringing your love. And
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so, so honored to be here. My heart is bursting and full. My whole body is tingling. My whole body is tingling. So I know that's a massive yes. So thank you so much for the invitation. It's been an absolute joy.
it is my honor. And we just want to send everyone that's listening so much love. And if you're sitting in a place where you're getting that nudge to take the leap, I just invite you to go through this exercise that we have learned today and let that be your guiding light. And just maybe in this moment, just sit and ask, like, what is my next, and be open to receiving that guidance and start your journey to that next leap. We are just sending you love and a hug until we meet again. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.